Betamax and VHS were incompatible formats, but the tape inside the cassette was the same. So a fool might think that you could put the Betamax tape into a VHS cassette and it will play. Of course this won't work. The formats are completely different in many key features, including head drum size, the tape speed, the angle that the recordings are made relative to the tape, and more. So there is no point at all in putting the Betamax tape inside a VHS cassette, right? Well, actually, I've just done that very thing, and for good reason, and it worked. Well, just about anyway. So what possible reason could there be to have done such a crazy thing? Well, a customer had a very precious wedding video recorded on Betamax in the NTSC television standard. This tape had been submerged in floodwater during a typhoon in the Philippines. All the family's photos were destroyed in that disaster, so all they had now was this very damp tape of their wedding, which by now had suffered a lot from mould growth. When I took the job on, I didn't know about the history of this tape. So my first attempts at playing the tape were futile. It would clog the heads as soon as the tape was inserted into the player, resulting in no picture, and then you have to clean the heads on the player, which all takes time. So I put the tape through a long baking process in my tape baking oven. Now I call this my pasty oven because it reminds me of the ovens that pasties are sometimes kept warm in. What's a pasty? It's like a pie to eat on the go. My pasty oven is set to 50 Celsius and I've made a few small modifications to this, including fans to keep the air circulating. 24 hours or so in this can do wonders for a tape which is suffering from sticky shed syndrome, which is where the tape is degrading and so keeps clogging the player's heads. However, this tape had a different problem due to the mould, and the baking process didn't really help. There are some machines called an RTI TapeChek, which are designed to clean and test videotapes. Alas, I don't possess such a thing. They're very rare in the UK. However, I do know someone who has one of these machines, which is intended for cleaning VHS tapes. I'll provide some contact details for him in the description below. So I loaded the customer's beta tape into a VHS shell, retaining the clear VHS leader tape. That's different to the beta leader tape, which is foil, and that's the way it detects the start and end of tape. I gave this a name, the VHBeta Frankentape, since it's part VHS and part beta. It's a bit like Frankenstein's monster. The tape was sent for cleaning in the RTI TapeChek 490, and you can see the cleaning process here. It was cleaned multiple times until the amount of errors it reported stopped falling, and this was the last run. We pick up here from where I get the Frankentape back from the cleaning process. So what we have here is the VHB Frankentape, which has come back from cleaning, the original Betamax tape. So this is the shell, complete with the magnetic leader tape still on the spools. And what I should do is splice this back onto those reels. However, I may do something else. This tape is pretty ugly. The spools are still covered in mould on the inside. So what I might do instead is to use this beta tape. Now the interesting thing about this is not a domestic Betamax tape. This is a professional studio Betacam SP tape. However, Betacam and Betamax are very closely related and have the same type of shell for these purposes, complete with the same magnetic leader tape. So what we're going to do, I think, is put this tape into this cassette. Now that's a little trickier than it sounds because I need to wind it. So what I'll have to do is, I don't know what I'll have to do. I'll have to think about it. Let's go through the process. We'll start by getting our spools out of the VHBeta Frankentape. This is then gash. We can throw this shell away, I think. So what we have here, VHS clear leader tape, which uses the optical auto stop system. You can see a tiny fragment of the magnetic leader tape there, and then onto the recording material, which still looks very mouldy to me. I know this has been through a cleaning process, but it doesn't look good. The edge is damaged there, but that's only a short section. Oh. I'm not sure I'd want to run that through any machine. Does it get any better? I don't know if you can see that in the light there, but there's a lot of mould material still left on this tape. I can also see some faint scoring running along the length of the tape, which is presumably from the cleaning process. Not a pretty sight, and each time I do this we're losing a few more seconds of the recording. It's a difficult call. How much of this do I put onto the spools to load into the beta machine? Difficult call. I've become confused which way around it goes. Right, that way then. So let's start with the splicing kit. Okay, we can discard this now. We'll now splice that onto the first spool of this tape. This is not sellotape or scotch tape. This is professional video splicing tape. It comes in a very large spool, and I believe this was originally used on the machines that made pre-recorded video films. It was used on the duplication machines. Squeeze the air bubbles out. And that's a very high quality splice. I could quite happily run that past video heads. There's nothing sticking out beyond the edges. Nice clean splice. So now we have the problem of how do we wind the tape onto this spool? Well, actually we've not quite finished with the VHS shell after all, because what I'm going to do is put that beta spool into the VHS shell. Strangely enough, the pattern underneath is sufficiently similar that it won't bother a machine for the purposes of winding. You can see that VHS and Beta really have quite similar beginnings because they were originally supposed to be one format. Right then. So we'll go back to the shell for the VHS tape and we'll fast forward that to the end. It still has VHS leader tape on the end of this spool, so it will stop okay safely at the end of the fast forward process. I won't fit all the VHS tape screws in here, we just need to hold the shell together for long enough to do the fast forward process. Now, while that's happening, I have a problem. This spool needs to be empty in order to splice the other end of the tape on. How could I do that? Well, I could use this empty spool, but I was trying to avoid that because it's still covered in mould. I could use it, it would work, it would be safe enough to use, and it is tempting, but I think what I'll do actually is splice this reel of BetacamSP tape onto this spool, fast forward that in a Betamax machine, then I'll get to the end of this spool and I can splice that back onto the tape. Hopefully this all makes sense. Let's begin with that. So this is only a gash join just for the point of view of getting the tape off the spool. Now I'll use a Sanyo Betamax machine for winding this tape for a very good reason. Sanyo machines don't remain laced up, most of them don't remain laced up during fast forward and rewind, whereas most Sony machines do. And I don't want it laced up because I don't want to run this BetacamSP tape past a Betamax head. This is a metal tape, it's a slightly harder formulation than normal Betamax oxide tape, and there's a risk of increased head wear, so we don't want to go there. Let's fast forward this in a normal Sanyo Betamax video recorder. While that's fast forwarding, what we have now is the Betamax tape that we're trying to recover loaded onto this new spool. So we can take it out of the VHS shell and discard this now. The end of this tape looks to be in fairly poor condition, and I know that the recording stops before the very end of the tape, so I'm going to cut this last few minutes off. Not needed. Now all I need is the empty supply spool, left-hand spool of the Betacam tape. We have this Betamax one, but you can see that it's covered in mould. I don't like it. I'm going to try to avoid using that. Fresh from the Sanyo Beta machine, we now have fully fast-forwarded tape with the BetacamSP tape on the right-hand spool. I have a question to myself. Should I load this finished tape into the shell of the original Betamax recording or into the shell of this BetacamSP tape? And on the one hand, I prefer the BetacamSP tape because it's clean and in good condition. On the other hand, the Betamax tape, this particular one I particularly like, it's obviously TDK manufacture because it has two windows on it. And you can see where the tape is, both on the supply and take-up spool. But I think I will load it in the BetacamSP tape, not least because it'll be interesting to see how that works. So here on this right-hand spool we have the Gash BetacamSP tape spool. There's nothing wrong with it, but we just don't need it. It's not the recording we're looking for, so we'll discard that. The leader tape on these BetacamSP cassettes seems a bit short. we now have the Betamax tape on the BetacamSP spools. And we're going to, I've decided, load that into the BetacamSP shell because it's clean and high quality. When loading tape into shells of VHS or Beta, you need to be aware of these small segments here behind the guide. It's a kind of piece of tape, thick plasticky tape there, which I believe is there to clean the tape as it goes past. And you need to load the tape properly in there, or the cassette won't function to its best. Right. I'm happy that's fully loaded and correctly loaded in the bottom part of the BetacamSP shell. Drop in the top part. This normally goes easier than this, and I can guarantee that this is only happening because we have a camera and a tripod, everything in the way. Got a bit of a tussle that I don't normally have. That's all correctly fitted. Opens and closes properly. Now there is a difference between Betamax and Betacam in this area here. There are markers to tell a Betacam machine which type of tape it is, whether it's oxide or digital Betacam or BetacamSP of this type. Now that won't bother the Betamax machine one little bit, but that is a difference you'd need to be aware of if you're going the other way around and putting a Betamax shell, using a Betamax shell with BetacamSP or digital Betacam or similar. And in fact, if you've ever seen Wall-E, the film, they made a mistake. Wall-E was supposed to have had a Betamax tape, and at one point you see underneath the Betamax tape, and clearly it wasn't Betamax. The nearest thing to Betamax tape that the animators had to hand was clearly a BetacamSP shell. So when you look underneath the tape, you did see it for a moment, it has these markings here of a Betacam tape rather than just the plain area here on the Betamax tape. So that was a little error in there. Also the way the record tab works is slightly different. On Betamax there's a tab here you knock out, and on Betacam you slide this tab up and down to disable recording. But clearly the Betamax machine won't know or care about that. Right, that tape shell is now good. We should be able to load that into the Betamax machine and see if it plays any better. Judging by how it physically looks, and also that I heard the VHS machine struggling to fast forward part of this tape, I suspect that the mould problem, though better, is probably not good enough to run the tape fully, but I can only try. Okay, so we're going to try this cleaned tape. It's been fully rewound. I'm very suspicious that this is not going to work very well, but let's give it a go. We're already doing video capture. That was an interesting start, wasn't it? Let's try again. Okay. We went straight into clogging the heads on the Beta player. So the sound but no picture. A very bad start. Let's clean up the heads on the beta machine and try again. Right, I've cleaned up the head satisfactorily. Now then, looking at this tape, I don't know if you can see, but the tape surface is not as it should be. You can see the mould on there and lines left by the cleaning process. So I'm going to fast forward some of the tape. We'll have to miss the intros on this wedding and see if I can get to a cleaner part of the tape and run it. How far should I go? I'll go several minutes. Shall we have a look at the tape again before I consider running it? Still not great. I think I'll fast forward a little bit further and then have a go at capturing it from there. Right, reset the counter. Let's see if we can capture anything. So within a few seconds we went straight into a head clog again. This is depressing. Fast forward the tape further and we'll clean the heads again and we'll try again. Okay, let's try the customer's tape once more, having fast forwarded it. Well, it's working. Let's see if it keeps going.
Betamax is the best. Everyone knows that. Beta is the future.
VHS is the best. You get all the best movies on VHS.
There were about 4 more head clogging parts of the tape which remained unplayable, so I had to edit those out. However, in the end I reckon I recovered all but about 2 minutes of the 2-hour tape, much of it in fairly good quality. The customer was thrilled with the outcome, which made it all worthwhile. Now before anyone asks, just what happens if you were to try to play a VHBeta Frankentape on a VHS deck? Well, it's like this. It's just a mess, of course. I hope you learned something from this unusual challenge. I know I did. Please do remember to share, like and especially subscribe to my channel so that I can do some more audio, video and technology videos in the near future. Bye for now. Which is the best one, Max?
Because the winner.
Thank you, Max.
You're welcome.